Minister, thanks for joining us. Just a few things we'll make clear for consumers right up front. These changes won't affect people currently in aged care, and the treatment of the family home doesn't change. But let's have a look at some of the changes that are in place. Let's start with residential care. Part pensioners and self-funded retirees will have to pay more in the future. Will they be paying more upfront and or on an ongoing basis, and what will they be paying for?
Well, what we're trying to do is make the system sustainable, and that means we, the government, will be paying more year on year because this is a sector that keeps growing, and we know more tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Australians are going to need to enter the aged care system in the coming years to 2035. What we're trying to do, though, is re-gear the system so that people can spend longer at home. That's what they've told us they want to do. They want to spend longer at home and then only enter residential aged care when they really have to. And at that point, we want it to be clear what their clinically assessed needs are and the contributions that they'll have to pay. There are existing contributions for people in residential aged care now. At the moment, the government or the taxpayer pays about 75% of those, and the consumer or participant pays 25%. That's going to drop to 73% from government or taxpayers and up to 27% for participants.
So how is the Support at Home program announced today different from the existing one that's available? What will people sort of be able to get, and what will they pay for?
So it's big structural changes over at Support at Home because, like I said, more people want to stay at home. We want to make sure that the whole system is geared towards keeping people at home and independent for longer. Currently, people would know there's 4 different levels of packages you can have in home care. It's going to go up to 8. Under Support at Home, and that's in recognition of the fact that people have more complex needs requirements, and we want to support them to be able to have those complex needs looked after at home rather than being forced to go into residential aged care because they have no other choice. And there's also 2 other levels that are non-ongoing for transitional care. That's if you have a fall at home, trying to get you back out of hospital as quickly as possible and get those supports and services in your home. And palliative care, which is a really important one because people have told us for so long that they want to be able to die at home, not in a hospital. So this new Support at Home will have up to $25,000 for people to be able to leave home in the last 12 weeks and receive that care, in the community, in the place that they love.
So just going back to the basics, though, how will Support at Home be means tested? And you've also said that you will speed up the process for assessment. How will that actually happen? I mean, the workforce isn't necessarily larger. Why will it all happen faster?
Well, I guess that's one of the structural changes. At the moment, like I said, some people pay a contribution in home care, but it's just a flat daily rate, whereas under the new Support at Home, where you are clinically assessed as having need for services in clinical care, the taxpayer will always pay for that, so you never need to make a decision about whether you can afford wound dressing or an OT to come and see you or not. But for your independence and your everyday living, those kinds of things that you've been used to paying for your whole life, like the gardening or the cleaning or the guttering, then we'll be asking people to make a more reasonable contribution towards the cost of that. But because of the scale, because of the number of people that are going to be coming into Support at Home, if everybody does that, that means that the cost and the contributions will be able to rise with the demand as the decades come and as more and more people need aged care.
How does this package address the viability of the sector?
There's a big investability gap. People have been talking for, I'm sorry to say, years now about this and how the cost of care is rising, but the way that people can collect contributions hasn't kept up, and that means that effectively the result has been that people don't build beds anymore. Since COVID, there's been a real freeze on people building beds, and that's because they're not financially viable and the sector isn't seen as a financially viable place to invest.
So
we know.
So sorry to interrupt, but will the money be coming because those maximum caps have increased on how much they can collect from people on the way in, or will it also be because of the amount of funding the government's giving on an ongoing basis?
Yep, so the government will continue to be the majority funder of aged care, and our contribution will rise year on year. Some of the things that we've brought in as reforms, like IHACPA, the Independent Pricing Authority, means that the pricing is now set by an independent body, and we as government table that advice in the Parliament, and so far we've followed it. So that has meant that there's been big increases of government funding, the indexation rate, things like the $11.3 billion we've contributed towards the wage rises for aged care workers has meant that there's been a lot more money flowing into the system. But the big gap is where we need renovated wings, new wings open, and new beds, new facilities. So we need to find that gap, and increasing the contributions in a few different places, like we've talked about and I won't recover already, means that we'll be able to address that gap. The sector will be seen as investable, and we'll have that capital flowing in so that there's enough beds for everybody when they need them.
So we've got two things happening here. You're going to be putting more into care for people while they'll be paying a lot of their everyday costs. But the Treasurer is saying this will also actually save $12.6 billion over 11 years. Where do the savings come from?
Well, effectively, like we've sort of said in residential care, at the moment the taxpayer pays 75% and the participant pays 25%. The government contribution will go to 73%. In home care, at the moment, the taxpayer pays 95% of the cost of home care and the actual participant pays 5%. That's going to shift to 89% coming from government and 11% from the participants. So probably the easier way for your viewers to take this is, for every dollar that you are going to be asked to put into home care, the taxpayer will continue to put in $7.80 towards the cost of your care. And for every dollar that we're asking you to put into your residential aged care, the taxpayer will continue to put $3.30 towards the cost of your residential aged care.
So you've promised that there's a lifetime contribution cap of $130,000 to the total cost of your care, whichever form it takes, which is up from about $79,000. But isn't that actually going to be a higher cost because you have done this deal with the coalition, so both sides are agreeing that aged care providers can hold on to part of that refundable deposit and so you won't be getting as much money back, or your family won't be getting as much money back?
I think what both sides have agreed is that we need this sector not to fail, and this sector is on its knees. So business as usual isn't going to cut it in aged care. So we've taken the recommendations of the task force. This isn't this isn't something that we've come up with briefly. We set an aged care task force made up of industry experts, providers, consumers, advocates. They brought recommendations to the government, and we have adopted most of them, I think nearly all of them, including what they've said about what to do here.
Anika Wells, thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thanks, Laura.